Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded, and for those attendees that would like to share this content with some of their fellow colleagues, or perhaps those attendees who were not able to make it for today's webinar, we will be sending out a follow-up email with a link to the recording. We're going to have a Q&A briefly at the end of today's webinar. If you have any questions, by all means, please feel free to put them in the chat window on the sidebar of the Skype meeting here. So my name is Duncan Smith. I am the business lead for the SharePoint practice at New Signature. And I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Andrew Ortiz, who's one of our SharePoint solution architects, and Morio Kumagawa, who is the practice lead for the SharePoint group at New Signature. Today we're going to be talking about the future of SharePoint, and I'm going to spend just a few minutes sort of setting the scene here, talking a little bit about what has changed and what really has not changed over the past 10 to 15 years as we've been building world-class internet portals and SharePoint solutions. I'm then going to hand it over to Andrew, who's going to give us a quick overview of some of the new features and functions that Microsoft has been rolling out for SharePoint 2016 and SharePoint Online. And then Morio is going to provide us with a little bit more context around where we've come from in terms of the SharePoint solutions that we've built over the past few years, and provide some insight into how we would look to develop SharePoint solutions moving forward, given the changes in the technology and the new features and functions that Microsoft has released. Okay, let's get started. So to set the scene, one of the things that I think is more or less the same today as it was, say, 10 years ago, is the core scenarios that really drive modern collaboration and drive the need for an intranet or a digital workspace within an organization. Generally speaking, those three scenarios are as follows. People want a centralized place where they can go and securely collaborate on documents, where they can go and find the documents and the information that they themselves need, and that they can share with other people within their organization, whether it be a small team or a department. So really focusing on the content. The second scenario really revolves around more top-down communications. A centralized place where you can go and get information about what's happening within the organization, hear from your executives, get access to new information if you're onboarding, keep up to date with changes around policies and procedures, other information that's being shared across the organization. The last scenario really revolves around business applications and the tools and the systems that you need to get access to on a regular basis to get work done within your organization. So whether it be a time tracking system, a place to go and request potentially a new asset from IT, or approval to expend and do some purchase requisitions, whether it's an ERP system or some other line of business solution within your organization. The internet is typically the starting place for getting access to all of those different tools and things that you need to be productive and to get through your regular day. That said, the underpinnings of the modern internet and what we increasingly refer to as a digital workplace certainly has changed a lot. And I think what is important here to note is not just the underpinnings and the technology, but people's expectations have changed a lot as well in terms of the experience and the look and feel and how they interact with their corporate internet. Specifically, people have an expectation that they can get access, secured access to that information while on the go, whether they're sitting at their desk or on a remote device, whether they're out on the shop floor or potentially visiting a customer site, they need to be able to get access to those documents, and they need to know that the security around those documents is going to persist and follow them wherever they be. In terms of communications, people now have an expectation that communication is a two-way street. It's not just about reading and absorbing the message and sort of the strategic direction for your company. It's also about providing feedback and comment and sharing and showing, favor or questions, asking out loud about how this might impact the future of the company, or where to go to find answers around a specific communication or announcement within an organization. And last but not least, this idea of intelligent business apps, where what we're expecting is a more seamless, a more contextual, and a more dynamic interaction and integration with the apps that really support your various lines of business. So that next action isn't something that you have to click around and spend a lot of time thinking about. Information is just presented to you in the context of you doing your daily work, so that those tools are available at your fingertips. So with that said, I want to now give you sort of a quick, went a little bit too far there, a quick preview of a internet solution, a digital workspace that we've created. You can really sort of see that more modern look and feel, where we're trying to increasingly keep things streamlined and simple and contextual and very dynamic for employees, so that it's not just a place where they have to go, but it's a place where they want to go, because it represents the brand, it helps people be more productive and stay connected to their organization and their teams within the organization. Okay, I'm now going to turn it over to Andrew to talk a little bit more about the future of SharePoint and the new functions and features that Microsoft has released. Over to you, Andrew.
Okay, thanks, Duncan. Hi, everyone. So as this slide is loading, what you may notice is that SharePoint is constantly changing. Like SharePoint, there are features that are being added constantly by Microsoft, first in the cloud and then to your SharePoint 2013 on-premises. It happens fairly quickly. Obviously, we won't go into all of the things that are happening during this webinar. But I guess the key point to realize is, SharePoint, it's more than just SharePoint now. It's SharePoint and how it integrates with Office, with the rest of Office 365. So some of the areas that we can talk to briefly are, for example, OneDrive with Office. So from within OneDrive, you can now view your SharePoint, browse SharePoint from within OneDrive. Office video. Video was something that was in huge demand for quite some time. Now we've got Office video, and we have that seamless integration. We've got the SharePoint mobile apps, along with a number of other mobile apps that Microsoft has worked on and provided us. And then we've got the Windows app. So SharePoint is, that integration with Microsoft Flow, with webhooks, some of the new technologies that Microsoft is working on. They're continually innovating and bringing it all together. So let's just talk briefly about some of the new pages, for example. So SharePoint is no longer about document libraries and simple list and a few web zone pages. We've got new types of modern pages, which are fairly easy and quick to put together. So you no longer need a specialized expertise. They've simplified the approach to editing with the modern pages, which allows you to quickly upload media and content. And all of this is it's all HTML, JavaScript based behind the scenes. They're responsive from the get-go, so you can now view them in your mobile browser, which is great. 18 months ago or 2 years ago, there would be a lot of work to make that happen, and now Microsoft does that work for you. And then obviously underlying it all is the Microsoft Graph, which is helps with machine learning and allows you to see the content that pertains to you, pertains to the people that you know, the type of content that you're creating and working with regularly. So here we see, even the web parts have evolved, and Mario's going to go through a little bit more detail on some of the web parts. But the web parts are designed to run within SharePoint, the JavaScript based, and there's quite a number of new web parts that are designed. And I'll show you one of them on the news page. So we've got the What's News articles, and what these bring to the table is it allows you to quickly create articles, team news, whatever types of information you want to share. And Microsoft has included a number of pages and web parts that will automatically roll that up for you. So you have different views. You sort of have, if you can see the image, you have a view where there's a main article, and then in the center left, and then you've got related articles on the right. And that's like, you just slap a web part on the page and that shows up for you. So they're making it fairly easy for you to quickly create these publishing-based modern web pages with very little effort. Also, the news can be personalized, so that's all part of the machine learning to personalize the content for you. So, and also you can make changes to those pages quite easily. And then lastly, just briefly wanted to touch on the various, the ability to access that content from anywhere, as Duncan alluded to earlier. There are a number of mobile apps that have been created. There's the SharePoint app, there's the Delve app, there is the groups. So you can look at Office groups where you have teams that are collaborating on documents and conversations. You can get access to your contacts as well. So again, bringing all of that information that you've got within Office 365 to your fingertips. And I haven't even talked about Word and Outlook and all of that stuff, but just to give you a sense of what you can do with SharePoint now, and these are readily available. So that's it for some of the new capabilities. I'm going to now hand it over to Mario, and he's going to take you through a little more detail on some of the SharePoint sites that we've worked with.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so now we are going to, we're going to walk through the evolution of SharePoint. As Duncan mentioned earlier, what we're looking to achieve with the portal hasn't really changed all that much over the years, but how we can build them and what we can do to achieve those goals has, I believe, significantly changed, especially recently, and given us the capabilities to get even closer to what we've always been trying to build. So I started with SharePoint back in 2003. It's much longer, much further back now than I would like to admit, but these are the portals that we would have built back then. These would have been, cutting edge. They would have been they would have gathered a lot of excitement, and it's a way to bring all that information together that people have been looking for. But these were top-down portals. This was corporate-driven content, or from the HR department, or something along those lines. It was very much a one-size-fits-all experience. This information, while important to the end user, at a certain point in time, certainly didn't help them do their day-to-day jobs, and because of that, we saw low adoption rates. Right? You would set this as your corporate homepage. People would be forced to go here. They'd go and they'd maybe, if you were lucky, check if there was a new article that interests them. but that was about the extent of it, right? There wasn't a whole lot to drive people to come to this page. So as the technology evolved, we started moving into social portals. Facebook was a big driver of this. The popularity of that had people asking, well, why can't we do something similar within the corporate environment? This had a lot of advantages. Now this content was curated based on your interests. You could follow certain groups, you could follow certain people, and you would have a feed in the middle that brought back information that was far more relevant to you. It helped break down silos. Maybe you didn't know there was someone, in another location who was doing more or less the same job as you, and they had a different way of doing it, or someone had already, written that document before. This was a way that, you could ask that question to everybody, rather than, having to search for that person. You could throw that question out there and get a job. But, again, this content wasn't necessarily relevant to your day-to-day job. While it was interesting and, it may help you when you have those questions, it wasn't something that, again, that maybe you would use every day. You would come there and, certainly look at the latest conversations. It would be more interesting than the corporate news. It would be more interesting than the corporate content that was driven. So we did see higher adoption rates on this, but it didn't help you do your day-to-day job generally. And so, again, it was a bit of a, although better, still wasn't quite where we would like to be. And that moves us into modern portals. And this is a screenshot of a site that we delivered not too long ago, just a few months ago. And you can see we have a balance now of that content. We have the corporate-driven content, the news, the announcements, the things that are important. They don't change every day, but they still are important to drive out there to build that culture of your company. We also have the Yammer Feed built into that, so you still have the social aspect, so you can ask those questions. But the biggest piece, and Andrew alluded to this, and Duncan alluded to this, was the intelligent business apps. What's now being called a cognitive collaboration. And it's the ability to look in and personalize these pages based on the individual, to bring back content that is relevant to their day-to-day job, to look in and see what are the documents that you've currently been working on, who are your team members, what has your team members been working on, what groups are you a part of, which sites have you been following, all these things that you do need to do. So now this can become that page where it is your corporate homepage. It comes up first thing in the morning, and you can look at it and say, oh yeah, there's a document that I was working on yesterday that I need to finish off. Here's a document that's coming from someone else that I'm going to have to look at once they complete it. Maybe I can take a look at it today. And here's some interesting things that are being worked on that are relevant to your domain that maybe you don't know about. So this is leading to an even higher adoption rate. And the reason, as you can see, the reason we're seeing better and better adoption rates as we go down is that we're starting to learn that while we need the technology to be able to display these pieces, the challenge isn't so much in the technology as it is in matching these pages to what the person does, to what your users need on a day-to-day basis, and matching it to those business cases and what they do. So what's really interesting, and Andrew alluded to this as well, is they're always releasing. Microsoft is always releasing new features. They're releasing new tools and new pieces. And this again is a site that we only that launched just a couple months ago. It's relatively new in the Office 365 stack. But even this page, given the web parts that are coming out, there's even easier ways we can attack this than we could previously before. For instance, this news headlines web part right now, in this particular solution, this was a JavaScript-based web part. Historically, if we go back, to that 2003, 2007, 2010 site, this would have been a full C#. You need a developer, you need a stylist, a web designer, and all that stuff to roll it out. We moved into 2013 into Office 365. This becomes a little easier. You can script it through a scripted through a script editor web part, becomes a little easier to build. But now with the new, they call them modern web parts to go with the modern pages, there's actually a news headlines out of the box web part. And the advantage of this one is that, this one will automatically update. You publish a new news article, and that article will pop up here. There is no maintenance that goes along with it. You don't have to have someone who goes in and updates the web part or updates the list that drives the web part or however you've done in the past. You publish a new news article, and it would show up here. And so, now you have the ability to just take that web part and put it in here. One thing to highlight here before I go through the rest of the web parts, these new modern web parts are currently only available on the new modern pages, so the new team sites. But it is expected that these new modern web parts will be available on any page, classic or modern, very shortly. It was actually supposed to be released at the end of 2016, but it did not get released, so I would expect it somewhere early in 2017, but it is still in the roadmap. It's currently in testing from looking at the Office 365 roadmap. So the next one to look at, this was highlighted content that we looked at. Again, this is, you can go back again and look how this would have been a full trust web part, a script web part, definitely based on a list generally. Maybe a content search web part, looking for keywords, but you would have to create your own display template. There was a lot of work that went into creating these, and now there is a highlighted content. It's another out-of-the-box web part. You can filter content by the title, the keywords, any metadata that you've associated with your content. And then you can sort it by, most recent or most viewed or trending. And trending is one of those Office Graph, one of those cognitive collaboration ones that it kind of looks within your network. Who are the people you work with most frequently? Where are the areas you are working with most frequently? And then which documents are getting the most traction within those environments? Whereas, most recent and most viewed are a little more, may not be as relevant to the individual user as trending can be, but it also would kind of guarantee that they would see the most recent things rather than, trending could show you stuff that's a little older but still, being used a lot. And then as we move over, the Yammer Feed, the Yammer integration is certainly another topic that we could, spend a lot of time on. It's certainly not where anybody would expect it to be by now. But one of the surprises was there was a Yammer app back in the early days of the Office 365 Yammer experiment that went away, and we were just left with Yammer Embed, which wasn't the worst thing in the world for sure, but it was another a script that you had to put in there and do some work. So you didn't have to be a top tier developer to be able to do it. You had a lot of samples, but again, it was another piece of code that you had to maintain. They've now added a Yammer Feed, this web part, another out-of-the-box web part. You have to add in the URL of your Yammer group or your person or the topic or the home, whichever feed that you want to follow, but that's about it. And then you get a Yammer Feed on your page. And then the followed sites. Right now, the followed sites is still a script editor web part, but the REST endpoint is provided to you by SharePoint. It's a fairly simple script. I would expect this one gets thrown into a modern web part at some point in the near future as well, just to make it a simpler out-of-the-box web part. But this followed sites becomes much more important now. When you're in Office 365 and you go to the SharePoint page, users have the ability to follow sites, and this just allows the users to put their own. It's similar to what the My Links web part would have been back in the day, but now this is definitely targeted at that user. These are the sites that they're following. The other thing too is a user can follow users, documents, sites, and tags. It's not just SharePoint sites that this particular piece would bring back. And then the recent documents. Now this one is a little more interesting because this can be Office. This is an Office Graph based one. this can bring back. In this particular example, we went with recent documents, so this brings back the stuff that they've been working on last, which I think is a great driver to have people come back and look at their site or look at their homepage, right? Because now I know I can, what was that document I was just working on yesterday? I can go and find it here. We can also, because this is an Office Graph based web part, we can also look at what's trending around that person, who are the people you've been working with. Things along those lines. And this, the graph is not looking just at SharePoint, it's looking at OneDrive as well. It's looking at, and that's for just document based. And then for people you work with, it's also looking at, what you're doing on Yammer and what you're doing across the Office 365 stack. So the more that a person uses Office 365, the better this content is going to work out. But again, this was a harder web part to build back in the day. Now this is a script editor web part. I imagine we're going to get more and more of these Office Graph based web parts that come out as out of the box web parts moving forward. And then just to continue on that point, there is an out of the box activity web part now that will show the files you've been working with. So this is this will show what you're working with, and then the rest of the web parts that I was alluding to that we expect to come out will be more based on who you follow and what you're doing and what's trending in your environment. But again, this just highlights even though how the quick pace of the change, even though we built this page only 2 to 3 months ago, now we expect within the coming year that we would actually be able to take this page, which took a fair amount of work to build, from a development standpoint, and be able to build this more or less out of the box, just drag and drop out of the box web parts and get this same experience. So they're really making it a lot easier to build these pages. Of course, as we alluded to, the big thing that comes in here is mapping it to process, and Andrew's going to talk to a strategy piece now.
Yeah, thanks, Mario. So as Mario has shown you, there's quite a number of ways to, put your information out there so that it is useful to your users, to your organization. As we've shown you, there's quite a lot of different pieces of technology that Microsoft is bringing to the table. A lot of it is right there. It's at your fingertips. You can, once you subscribe to Office 365, or if you've got SharePoint 2016 on premises, it's all there and readily available. So then the question becomes, well, how do you work with all this technology? How do you create a seamless experience for your users? We went through one example that, like Mario took you through, one example for the landing page, a home page, for example. And what we tend to recommend is, start with a strategy. What are your objectives? What are the key benefits that you're trying to achieve, and what's that scope of whatever you're moving into to try to when you work with SharePoint. And one of the things that we could do as a company, New Signature, we do business value discovery workshops where we can help clients to tease out some of that information. Duncan, if you want to sort of jump in and describe that process a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Andrew. Really quickly, before we let folks adjourn for the day, the Value Discovery Workshop is, it's a collaborative exercise that we do at an early stage with the prospect, where we come in and bring together IT, who's always a key stakeholder in this, and then other people within your organization, whether it be corporate communications or HR or other, business sponsors and executives. And we bring our subject matter experts to the table as well, solution architects and folks like Mario from the delivery side of the house. And we have a very sort of collaborative whiteboarding session that talks through where your culture is today, where your business is headed, your previous experiences with corporate intranets and digital workplace type solutions. And we start to prioritize and work towards some defined vision and goals. And this really helps us, through that sales motion to better understand the customer to sort of align our offers and our SharePoint services to the needs of your specific organization. Lastly, I just want to also make mention of the fact that we have an additional webinar that's coming up in a few weeks' time, where we will go a little bit deeper into the new development framework for SharePoint, have a little bit more of a hands-on preview of how some of these technologies work, and discuss the options for development and building these types of very rich and contextual solutions in SharePoint and Office 365. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for their time today. Please feel free to post additional questions if you have them in the chat window, and by all means, do reach out to myself or Andrew or Mario if you'd like to further the conversation and learn more about how we can help with your plans for a modern internet experience. Thanks, Mario. Thanks, Andrew. Have a great day, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you.
And Duncan, there are a couple of things in the chat, or at least one.
Okay, let's see here. Oh, yes. So great question. Are there links available for the previous recordings? Yes, there are. And what we can do is we can add those links to the follow-up email so that people can get access to the previous recordings for the other webinar sessions that we've been posting on SharePoint.
And the other thing to note is we will be sending out a follow-up after this with the latest recording as well. You can get to all of them via that link as well. We post everything onto Vimeo and we have a channel there. So thank you so much.